Welcome back to another episode of the Authentic Man podcast. I'm your host, David Chambers. And today I'm going to talk about something that's really personal to me, my own experience of relating, being in a relationship and so forth. It's a struggle to communicate, communicate feelings and emotions, desires, wants. And I work with a lot of men who really struggle to get out what it is that's there for them. Sometimes they don't know what it is they want. Sometimes they don't know what it is they feel. Sometimes they know what they want and what they feel, but they're so scared to open up and express that when it comes to being dating and in relationships. So I'm going to talk about why this happens, right? And I'm going to rattle off through a number of reasons that I see the men that I've worked with, the men that have been in my programs. I'm going to start with this. It's kind of underlying one is this belief that it's not safe to feel and express, right? What's there. It's not safe in terms of there's going to be some sort of negative backlash. There's going to be judgment from a partner. If you express what you want to say when you're dating, then the woman's not going to want you, right? This is a really common one for men. So they really hold it all in. They don't say anything. And that can show up as anything from like just not speaking, filtering and censoring ourselves as well. And it just really causes a distance. If you're doing this in your dating life, it means that there's no connection being built. There's no depth being created. It's just you're having these kind of shallow dates where nothing really goes anywhere, or you're kind of always toing and froing about, oh, do I like this person? Do I not? Because there's a lack of kind of authentic expression. Another piece of it can be around this judgment of emotions in general, like a judgment of emotions are bad, emotions are difficult, emotions are wrong, of ourselves. So we judge our own emotions, but it also means we judge other people's, and that stops us from expressing ourselves. Right? It sounds quite simple, but it's the kind of, this can be that you judge all emotions to be bad other than being okay and happy and so forth. And it can come down to like there's a level of shame, even a little bit. Like we all carry some level of shame about some level of emotional expression. Right. And this always gets in the way of our ability to connect to people. So if I think that anger is shameful and bad and wrong, I have judgments about anger, then I'll never be angry with anybody, which will also lead to me being inauthentic at times, struggling to say what it is I want to say because I want to say that I'm angry, or I want to say something that would show that I'm angry, but I won't because I'm not allowed to be angry because I've judged myself for being angry. So, you get into these loops of not being able to really express what's there. And we do a lot of judgment around our own feelings and emotions. Another piece that can stop you from really expressing yourself and communicating openly is that feelings and emotions overwhelm you. So this can look like where there is times when there's things you want to talk about and feel, is that you just can't find the words, or you fall into like overthinking can be another one I see with a lot of men, or just a feeling of overwhelm, like, oh my God, the situation with my partner and I don't know what to do and I don't know what I want to say and I don't know what's really going on, of just almost like brain fog, being overwhelmed by the simple feeling of it. And I've seen a lot of men actually often get sick when there's a lot of emotional stuff going on in their life, which is normal. It's happened to me before as well, because it affects our nervous system and our immune system as well. Another piece I see with a lot of men in their relationship, also in dating especially, is this fear of rejection. If I say how I'm feeling or can communicate who I if I communicate who I am and what I'm about, then I'm going to be rejected. She's not going to want me, and blah, blah, blah. And what often this comes with is some stories of some period of time in the past where that happened to you. Oh, I expressed how I was feeling, and then the girl didn't want to see me again. I told my partner that I want this to go deeper, and then they broke up with me. I was open and vulnerable, and they left me. There's some sort of narrative with that makes you believe that this is always going to be the case, and that's always going to happen. And, we get this idea of this rejection that's going to always happen if we express. I touched on this next one, is this fear around assuming this fear of like negative things will happen if I am open, if I communicate. And this ranges from all over the place. This can affect your work. I've seen this with a lot of guys where they don't talk to their boss or ask what they need or ask for raises because they think, oh, if I do that, I'm going to get fired, or my boss is going to be angry. If I tell my wife that I want to go on holiday with my friends and she's going to get angry at me, or, whatever it is, you insert the thing that this person's going to, and we have these negative ideas that have come from the past, and we just really take the past and put it into the future. Right. Another piece I see with a lot of men, and this is kind of was something for me is that if I express how I'm feeling or what I want and so forth, I place burden on someone else. This idea that my feelings are a burden, my desires are a burden, or that someone else will want to, fulfill my needs if I express them. And I don't want to burden anybody. I don't want to be, I don't want to burden anyone in any way, right? We feel like, it's just wrong to expect anything of anyone else, which also conversely, I find comes with people who they will do a lot for everybody else, but they refuse to allow other people to fulfill their needs. And this actually stops people, when you do this, it stops people from actually getting close to you, right? It's a way of actually keeping people at arm's length, and you don't always realize that. And the next one is you don't actually know what you're feeling. This inability to identify feelings and emotions, sometimes it shows up in men, is that they only have a very narrow range of a few emotions they're able to notice. And actually what it is like they feel frustrated. They think they feel frustrated, but really there's like anger there, or there is disgust, but they only really, can identify everything that's kind of negative as quote unquote frustration. And this means that you just don't have the language to express yourself. So someone might have done something and you're like, why would I be frustrated at that person? It doesn't make sense. So you don't express it because you feel like in some way your feelings and emotions are invalid. But actually there might be just some other emotions under there. Might be a sadness. You feel that, someone's let you down, or, that your partner hasn't been able to listen to you in the way that you would like to. And actually sometimes that feeling often comes from some story of the past that you've experienced with a caregiver or an ex-partner. But if you're unable to notice that, then you're unable to put words or know what it is you really are feeling you want to say, or you start to say what it is you think you want to say, and you find that actually it isn't the words, it isn't really what you wanted to say, and you feel a bit confused, you feel a bit annoyed, and an inability to express yourself. Another one, when it comes to us communicating openly and honestly, is this fear of losing our independence. If I express myself, then somehow I'm going to become very close to this person, and I won't be independent anymore as a being, as a person. And as I said, I work with a lot of guys who are quite avoidant, because that's my kind of heritage and history. And this is a really common one, that if I tell them too much of my life, they'll know too much about me. Yeah. This fear of kind of this next piece I was going to say, this kind of fear of enmeshment, the fear of becoming so close that we lose ourselves. And these two kind of work in tandem together, the fear of losing independence and the fear of kind of enmeshment and getting too close, and kind of keep people at arm's length, and mean that we stay quite lonely. I see a lot of men I work with who come and they're just feeling lonely. They're feeling sometimes bitter about dating, and they desire to be with somebody, or they keep finding their relationships are falling apart at the same stages. So when we are doing all these things I've just listed off, it really stops us wanting to be close to people, really stops people wanting to get to know who we are, and leaves us in a state of feeling quite lonely, feeling really frustrated. Sometimes we are just feeling a bit isolated as well. Sometimes it's not really extreme. Or for a lot of guys that I work with, they're very successful in their kind of, what I say, their career life. They've got businesses that go well. They have careers that are going really well. They have active social lives. But when it comes to relationship, these are the places where these things really show up. And they struggle to understand them. Like, why is it just this area I can't get right? I almost feel like a failure as well. Imagine some of you feel this, where you feel like a bit of a failure. Like, I can get everything else right, but I can't do this. And I guess the goal is, where you want him to get to, is to express yourself openly and honestly and freely, expressing love as well, deeply for someone, or care as well, being resilient as well to the fears that you have. Like, if you're afraid of something, you're like, I can still express how I feel, irrespective of the reaction I'm going to get back. Yeah, because that's a fear as well that a lot of men, it's like, if I express myself, I'm going to get this huge reaction back from my partner or a date, and I can't handle that. But ultimately, what you're really looking for is to have that resilience, to be able to hold whatever there is for you personally, emotions and feelings, but also what can come back from someone else. So how do we get there? So it's not, I'm going to say how you get there, but it isn't this overnight thing that you're going to master in 3 weeks. If you've been a long-standing listener of the podcast, you know that I believe in that most things take a while to change. It's taken me a long time to really change and shift my ability to relate. And a lot of my clients I work with an issue like this, we're looking at kind of 3 months minimum really to make decent change, 6 months ideally, and 1 year to really bed in that change. But, these are some of the things you can start doing. is, first of all, is noticing feelings and emotions. This can be a really simple thing to do. There's an exercise I often give my clients to do when people start working with me, which is around journaling feelings and emotions. I have a particular style of this. I'm not going to explain it all here because it's a bit of a process, but like noticing the feelings and giving them words and writing them down, and just doing that daily for like a couple of weeks makes a difference, because we start to have the language of feelings and emotions. The second piece is actually to start practicing expressing what you feel. This is what's really useful when I run my group programs and also my one-to-one work, is that any man that's in those things, he's going to be practicing every single week with me or with the group of expressing himself in a space where there's no judgment, in a space where other people are expressing themselves. So you both get to express yourself and all hearing other people express themselves as well and resonate with them, because often we have similar experiences. But if you aren't in one of my programs, then you need to find spaces in your life where you can regularly express how you're feeling without, and actually, you know, I'd say to start with, without fear of kind of backlash or judgment. So sometimes that won't be a partner. That might be a trusted friend. That might be a family member even. That can be a bit tricky sometimes. But a space, might be a men's group, but a space where you can express yourself and practice doing that. So you get used to being like talking about what's going on for you, how you're feeling, or how things in your relationship are going, and being listened to, and sometimes being challenged, and sometimes being, you know, asked questions and given feedback. That's where I see the most kind of use come up for people as well. And those are kind of some of the basics of communicating. I think it's also noticing some of the stories we have around feelings, like what are the feelings that you judge, what are the feelings you think are wrong and bad. You know, anger is a very standard one for men, or rage, for instance. There's another one where we judge ourselves, we don't allow ourselves to feel that way, or even just being annoyed at people for doing things, you know, the judgments. And then there's also the stories we have. Like the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves are really important, because that's often where a lot of our emotions come from. So say, for instance, you're in a relationship and you find your partner interrupts you, and you find yourself really angry about it. Now you might go, oh, she interrupts me, that makes me angry. When really what it is there's a story you have about interrupting and what that means about you. And often it's usually in this, for example, it can be something like, if she's interrupting me, that means that what I'm saying doesn't matter, or she doesn't respect me. Yeah. And observing that story is the thing that creates the emotions, not what she does. If you dissolve the story and you realize that the story is unimportant, and you let go of that, and maybe any of the stuff, the kind of bodily wounding that is underneath, the interruption doesn't become a problem. And you can just very healthily say, hey, I prefer if you didn't interrupt me, without anger, without the kind of passive aggressiveness and stuff that often comes through. So I'm going to stop there, because I think that's a good place to, you know, you've got plenty there to get on with. But these are practices that take time. You got to do them consistently. You got to hold yourself accountable, because that's what really makes a difference. And that's what I see in the groups I run and the men that I work with one-to-one. So, as I said, finish there. If this has been useful to you, you know, first stage, you know, pass on someone else. Pass on someone else who'll be useful to as well. That'd be wonderful for me. Not for me personally, but for them as well, and for the growth of the podcast. But also, if it's been really useful to you and you really want to kind of dive deeper into this, you want to really handle this area of your life for stopping you from communicating and opening up, don't be one of those guys that goes, oh, I'll sort it later. Please, for your own good, I'm saying this, and don't just keep consuming information, because that doesn't solve your problem either. You need to be held accountable to the change you want, because I meet a lot of guys who come to me and they always say, I wish I did this 5 years before, I wish I did this before. So don't be one of those guys. Deal with the problem and an issue now, even if it's not a huge issue to you. Deal with it now, make it better now, right? And you will thank yourself in the future. Because I definitely, did. I'm glad that I looked at myself in my early 30s instead of just leaving it, kicking it down the can and going, oh, I'm okay, I get women, it's not a problem. But I was struggling to make real deep relationships actually work. So if that's you really want to be committed to that, then feel free to drop me an email and we can chat about how I can help you. We can work together to make that change in your life. All right. I will let you get on with your day, and I'll say ciao, ciao.